Just hours ago, the president was acquitted by the Senate on all charges, putting an end to the impeachment trial.
We want to know your thoughts on this. Grab your phone to weigh in. Do you agree with the Senate's decision to acquit President Trump? Scroll down on the homepage of the KENS 5 app and click Vote to share your thoughts.
You can also head to kens5.com/vote. Your responses will appear live on air.
And while you vote, Natalie Brand has more from Capitol Hill.
The Senate adjudges that the respondent, Donald John Trump, President of the United States, is not guilty as charged.
In an historic vote, the Republican-led Senate acquitted President Trump on Article 1, abuse of power, and on Article 2, obstruction of Congress.
My faith is at the heart of who I am.
Earlier, Utah Republican Mitt Romney made an impassioned speech to announce his decision. He voted guilty on abuse of power.
Were I to ignore the evidence that has been presented and disregard what I believe my oath and the Constitution demands of me for the sake of a partisan end, it would, I fear, expose my character to history's rebuke.
Mitt Romney's wrong occasionally. He's wrong in this case.
Moderate Democrats Joe Manchin, Kyrsten Sinema, and Doug Jones stuck with their party and voted to convict the president.
Our country deserves better than this.
House Democrats say investigations into the Trump administration will continue regardless of the outcome of the Senate trial.
House Judiciary Chair Jerry Nadler has indicated he wants to subpoena former National Security Advisor John Bolton after the Senate voted down a resolution to call him as a trial witness. According to a New York Times report, Bolton writes in an upcoming memoir that President Trump personally asked him to pressure Ukraine on investigations into the Democrats. President Trump has denied the allegations. Natalie Brand, CBS News, Capitol Hill.
And here's a look at your results so far. 54% of you saying you agree with the decision, 45% saying you don't agree, and so far 1% indifferent.